my dreams and my old team ran too far.
What's good, Angelites? It's your boy Angelo's World. Welcome back to our world. Y'all see that thumbnail? Y'all see that title? We were there when Nixon met Elvis. Shout out to Carrie Michelle for requesting this video. Let's check this out together. Smash that like button. Let's run the likes up and let's get straight to it. First, I know how not necessarily stay to reflect. Held in the Oval Office of the Nixon White House. When was this, 1970?
Good evening. I'm David Ferriot, the Archivist of the United States, and I want to welcome you to the National Archives tonight and the William G. McGowan Theater. I also want to welcome our C-SPAN audience tonight. C-SPAN is no stranger to this building, and we're always welcoming C-SPAN to share more of the Archives' treasures with the American public. 39 years ago last month, Elvis Presley, the most famous popular singer of his time, appeared at the White House gate. He handed the guards a handwritten letter addressed to the President of the United States, Richard Nixon, asking to meet with him. The letter was whisked inside the White House, and within hours, the king of rock and roll, as Presley was known, and the leader of the free world, as all presidents are known, were meeting in the Oval Office. The official White House photograph of Richard Nixon and Elvis Presley in the Oval Office is one of the most requested images from the National Archives. And if you haven't visited our shop, either physically or virtually, I encourage you to do so, where you can buy your own reproduction of that in paper or on a coffee mug and in several different formats. That is archives.gov. Tonight, you'll hear about that famous meeting from two eyewitnesses. Our moderator for the discussion is Dr. Tim Naftali, director of the Richard Nixon President Library and Museum in Yorba Linda, California. Dr. Naftali came to the archives in 2006 as director of our Nixon Presidential Materials Project. Then in 2007 became the director of the library after it was transferred to the National Archives by a private foundation. Since then, Dr. Naftali has overseen the near completion of an archival edition and an increase in activity in public programs in that library. We have released nearly 400 hours of Nixon tapes and more than 200 pages of Nixon textual material. He's conducted 126 video oral histories and has nearly completed the installation of a new exhibit on Watergate based on those oral history accounts. And he has managed the library through 2 earthquakes and a major fire. Before coming to the archives, Dr. Naftali taught history at several universities, including the University of Virginia. There, he was also director of the Presidential Recordings Program at the Miller Center of Public Affairs. He appears frequently in major print and broadcast media and has authored or co-authored 4 books, including Khrushchev's Cold War, The Inside Story of an American Adversary. In his most recent book, George Herbert Walker Bush, appeared in 2007. Dr. Naftali holds an undergraduate degree in history from Yale, a master's degree in international economics from Johns Hopkins, and a master's and doctorate degrees in history from Harvard. And now I turn the program over to Tim.
Thank you, David. David Ferriero has been with us a few months and has made a great change, and we're pleased to have him at the National Archives. Welcome to Yorba Linda. It's much warmer here. Actually, this is an away game for me, and I'm awfully cold. First of all, please join me in welcoming Eagle Bud Krogh and Jerry Schilling. Gentlemen. Bud Krogh was, you wait for the while. Bud Krogh was deputy to the counsel to the president. He oversaw the war on drugs and also the District of Columbia. He is perhaps the man most responsible for getting metal detectors into American airports.
Yes. Sorry about that.
He is now.
Seemed like a good idea.
It was a good start. And Bud is now associated with the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. Right. Jerry Schilling was a close friend of Elvis Presley's for 23 years, and he worked for him for 10. He's also a veteran of the music industry, and you're about to find out that these men are both superb raconteurs. So we're going to start now.
Thanks.
Jerry, set this up for us, okay? Because you're in Los Angeles.
Right.
You're not working for Elvis.
No.
Okay, it's 1971.
Yep.
What is Elvis doing flying by himself with a credit card?
I didn't have a clue. I mean, I was asleep. And I get this call, hey, and I go, who is this? He says, it's me. So I knew it was Elvis. And I said, where are you? And he said, I'm at the airport. He said, could you meet me at the airport? He was either in Dallas or I didn't know where he was. And I said, well, who's with you? Elvis Presley always traveled with an entourage. And he said, nobody. And he said, I don't want anybody in the world to know where I am. And he started giving me his flight numbers and what time he was coming in, things that Elvis Presley never did. So that was the start of me picking him up at LAX on a Saturday night about 1:30 in the morning. Of course, the next couple of days were quite interesting.
Well, now, he calls you and he wants you to pick him up at the airport.
Yes.
Now, how often did Elvis travel alone?
Well, this was the only time in the it wasn't 23 years then, but this was the only time in the 20 years. Not only not alone, but usually, 5 guys at minimum, He's never bought an airline ticket. He's never, we had to say, Elvis, it's time, we got to get to the airport, or, whatever it was. So he was on, I didn't know what mission he was on. I'm not quite sure if he knew to the extent of the mission he was on, but he was on a mission.
So, and then he's also running away from home a bit. He's only got one credit card.
Yes, and Elvis has been known as a quite generous guy, and after I met him at the airport, I found out the next day, as when I realized late at night, almost early morning, that I was the only person in the world that knew where Elvis Presley was. I couldn't go to sleep, So Elvis goes to sleep, and the next day is Sunday, and we get up and we have coffee at his old home in LA. And it was just 2 friends really catching back up. And in that conversation, he had told me, he said, I really got mad at Graceland. And he said, people were telling me how to spend my money. He was buying a lot of gifts. I mean, Vernon Presley and Priscilla Presley were only kind of looking out for him. And I think when the Colonel got involved in it, Elvis just went, whoa. I think he got in his car. He went to the airport. He had an American Express credit card. I think he took the first flight out, and he wound up here in D.C.
Was he carrying guns with him?
Always.
But what happened?
What's this?
Well,
What's this?
I thought since I'd raised the metal detector issue, what did he tell you about
He was inspiration for Bud.
Oh, geez.
but what happened on the plane?
Well, as I learned too the next day, when he got to Washington, he checked into the Hotel Washington, and then I don't think he knew, well, what do I do now? So that's when he called me, went back to the airport, went through Dallas, and got in touch with me. But he said what happened is he was really upset about people telling him how to spend his money. I didn't know he had gotten to Washington until the next day, but what happened is when he changed planes in Dallas, he said there was this smart aleck little steward with a mustache that came up to me and said, I couldn't, imagine this today, came up to me and said, you can't carry your guns on the plane. Now,
Seems reasonable to me. She didn't do anything wrong.
Now, in all due respect and credibility to my friend, he did have concealed gun permits. He did. He had been collecting badges. We had gone to rifle ranges. There had been threats on his life, and we were, including myself, we could carry concealed weapons. Anyway, Elvis got very upset, stormed off the plane, and the pilot came after him and said, Mr. Presley, it's okay. You can carry your guns.
That probably wouldn't happen today.
No. Well, he only had three.
He only had three.
Oh. Okay, so when did it become clear to you, this is in Los Angeles,
yes,
you picked him up, that you're going to go to Washington with him?
Well, Tim, as you said, I wasn't working for Elvis. I had worked a whole year at ABC television in a basement after quitting working for Elvis Presley, trying to get in as a film editor. I was an apprentice, and I just got this job at Paramount Studios. And so after this nice talk on Sunday that Elvis and I had, and he said, it was a brown sunset, and he goes, you know, Jerry, I need you to come to Washington with me. And I go, Elvis, I can't. I said, you know, I've worked this whole year, as you know, to get into Paramount. I got to be at work in the morning. And, you know, he was hard to say no to it. He looked like a little boy. He goes, okay, you know. He said, first of all, he said, I'll get a Learjet and fly you back. Well, I'm thinking, they were upset with him back there because he was spending too much money. So anyway, I go, I said, Elvis, I can't. And then I thought, man, he had this incident flying out on the airlines with the guns and everything. And I made a deal with him. I said, Elvis, if you will let me call Graceland, your father and Priscilla, and let them know you're not kidnapped, where you are, then I will take the all-nighter flight. And if I could call one of the security guys there to meet us, where I can go back and hopefully still have my job. So that started the evening of us with no money. Elvis never carried money. Taking an all-night flight from Los Angeles here to D.C.
But didn't you go into the old house and he took down from the wall one of his prized gifts, or one of the...
Yeah, this was on Hillcrest Drive in Beverly Hills, and this is where he spent the night. And then as we're getting ready to leave, Elvis had a little office, a very, very cool office, and there was a World War II commemorative gun. It was from Normandy and all these places, and he took it off the wall. He didn't give me a reason. I was used to Elvis doing things without explaining them to me, you know. So he takes the gun with him. I don't know. I still did not know why we were going to Washington. I was just making the arrangements, and I had been so many places with Elvis where I didn't know where I was going, so it was kind of normal for me.
And now you ended up with $500.
Yeah, I talked Elvis into letting his normal limousine driver take us to the airport, who he called, by the way, Sir Gerald, because he had found out years ago, I think, he was a driver for Winston Churchill or something. Yeah, and Elvis was a real history buff. I mean, this is the thing. He knew his history. And so it was Sunday night. We had no cash. I didn't carry any cash because I just didn't have any. Elvis didn't carry any cash because he didn't have to. So anyway, Sunday night, and I had Elvis's checkbook, and Sir Gerald found a guy at the Beverly Hilton Hotel that would cash a check for $500. So I made out the check, had Elvis sign it. On the way to the airport, we stopped at the Beverly Hilton, and I had an envelope with $500 in my coat, and the brown leather jacket that I wore to the White House. Anyway.
Very handsome outfit, by the way.
Thank you. I knew you were impressed.
I was.
You know, I was about as out of my environment that day as I am tonight, so bear with me. So anyway, they pre-board us on the plane for the all-nighter, and it was Christmas time, and there were a lot of soldiers coming back from Vietnam, and the ones that saw Elvis there, they would say hello. He got into a real conversation with one soldier for, like 10 minutes. And he comes back to me, and I'm sitting in the window seat, and he's here, and he goes, "Where's that money?" I knew what was going to happen, so I said, "What money?" And he goes, "The $500. I said, "Elvis, we're going to Washington. That's all we've got." He said, "You don't understand. This man's been in Vietnam. He's going back home for Christmas to see his family." He gave me the entire $500. So.
Then you find out about Senator Murphy.
You know, I'm trying to think how the introduction was made. I don't know if you know.
I don't know.
All I know is Senator Murphy was on the plane with us. Of course, he was in coach. We were in first class. Now I'm on government money. I'm on coach now coming here. So, but anyway, we had met when Murphy came on. I don't know if it had been from the guy who set up the meeting that Elvis was having with John Finlater at the Bureau of Narcotics and Drugs. Dangerous drugs. So, but when we were on the flight, about halfway through, Elvis went back and talked with Senator Murphy. And when he came back, he sat down next to me, and I had never seen Elvis Presley write a letter. And he had only written 3 in his life at that point. And that's when he was in Germany in the Army. So he said, "Do you think they have any stationery on the plane?" And I said, "Well, let me find out." And I asked the stewardess, and she brought us some American Airlines stationery. So I'm sitting here, Elvis is over there, he's writing a letter, and I respected his privacy. I didn't say, "What are you writing a letter about? What's going on?" I'm still figuring out how I'm going to get back to my job without losing it. And he finishes the letter, and he goes, "Jerry, would you proofread this for me?" And I said, "Yeah." And I'm reading this letter.
Jerry, while you tell us that, why don't we look at the first page of that letter?
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's the American Airlines stationery.
There it is.
What was your reaction when you read this letter?
I got to tell you, I was pretty impressed. I mean, I knew Elvis so well, and I knew where his heart was, and there was obviously some grammar that could have been corrected, but I thought, you know what? This is a letter from a guy who experienced the real American story, from poverty to being probably the most famous guy in the world. who is writing a letter from his heart to his president. And I said, you know, Elvis, I think you should send it just as it is. Yeah.
Now, was it clear to you when you read it that Elvis wanted to meet the president?
Yeah, because he stated to him inside that's the first I ever heard of that. I thought I didn't know why we were going back to Washington.
Well, let's look at another page from this letter, and you can explain to us who John Burroughs is.
John Burroughs is, at one point, I don't even know if you know this, Tim, was a character Elvis played in a movie. And it was an alias that his manager sometimes used, Colonel Parker. And so now you got to picture this. This is Elvis telling the president that he's under an assumed name, incognito, and that to contact him, he should contact his public relations man, Jerry Schilling. Yeah. So, but you know, that's kind of how Elvis, you know, that's how he did things.
All right. So what time do you arrive in Washington?
It was daybreak. I don't know the exact time.
So
red eye.
Yeah, it was a real red eye.
So what are you going to do with this letter?
Well, I'm thinking, knowing Elvis, he's not going to put it in a mailbox, you know. So, and I just gave it back to him, and he would tell me what he wanted to do, what he wanted to do with it. So, I had called the car from LA to meet us. I called the limo, and I'd gotten Sir Gerald to set that up for us. Thank God, because we had no money. And so it's actually before daybreak when we land, and we get in the limo, and Elvis said, I want to drop the letter by the White House. And I said, Elvis, it's not even daylight, and let's just go to the hotel. I want to freshen up. You know, I've been up 2 days now. And he said, no, I really want to deliver this. I wanted to be there first thing Monday morning, which it was. Yeah. So we're driving up to the gate. Bud, which gate is it?
The Northwest Gate.
Northwest. I always want to call it the West Wing or something, but it's the Northwest Gate. So he said, you just stay in the car. I said, fine. So Elvis gets out of the limo, and now it's starting to become dawn.
What is he wearing? You've got to set the scene for us.
He's wearing a he's wearing a kind of cape coat. He's got a cane. Actually, his hair was a little longer even than normal for Elvis. And, you know, for that time of the morning, it was kind of a Dracula look, you know. And, so he gets out, and the security guards at the Northwest Gate, I see this is not going well. So I jump out of the car and I say, gentlemen, please excuse me, but this is Mr. Presley who just wants to drop a letter off to the president. And they really warmed up and they said, you know, a senator's coming up at 7, and Mr. Presley will make sure that your letter is carried up and to be delivered to the presidency, to the president. And so we got in the car and then we went to Hotel Washington.
But when do you hear about the letter?
Well, first, I just want to say, Tim, that it's a delight to be here today. And Jerry, we haven't seen each other for 39 years since that day. Yeah. And I'm just, it's just great. Oh my God. It's just, I mean, talk about instantly liking somebody when I met Jerry, and
vice versa.
And I will just tell you what happened, because I came in a little bit after the letter arrived, because we started early in that White House. And I was sitting at my desk, and I got a call from Dwight Chapin, who is the president's scheduling secretary, and who I think we have to acknowledge tonight as the visionary for putting this whole thing together.
That's true.
Dwight Chapin at 7:15 in the morning is a genius. Yeah. So I mean, so he called me up around 7:30, 7:45, and he says, "Bud, the king is here." And I looked at the president's schedule and said, "What king? There aren't any kings on the schedule here." What are you talking about? He said, no, not any two-bit king, the king of rock, Elvis Presley, he's right here. I said, Dwight, come on, it's going to be a long day, 4 days before Christmas. He said, no, I'm reading this letter. He said he wants to meet with the president, and he wants to help on the drug program, and that's what you work on, because one of Dwight's jobs was to help get people in the policy area involved. So he said, I'll send the letter over to you. You can read it and tell me what you think. So White House messenger brings it over with a little red tag on it, and I start reading this letter, and I said, no, Dwight, you're really good. Now, full disclosure requires me to tell you that I belong to a group of 8 guys who played practical jokes on each other in the White House every week. And this was my turn to have one played on me by Chapin. So I figured, okay, well, I'll go along with it. I'll read this letter. And as Jerry said, towards the end, it said, I'm staying over at the Washington Hotel under the name of John Burroughs. Would like to see you and the rest. Well, I read it and I figured, what do I do with this? Well, I'm going to try this out. So I called over to the hotel with the numbers that you can see on the screen. Private and confidential. We're good at that stuff. Yeah, it's a secret.
You can only get to me.
You can only get to you. And I get Jerry answers the phone. I said, my name is Bud Krogh, and I had this letter here from Elvis Presley. I'm laughing on the phone because I'm expecting to be talking to Dwight's daughter, who's all part of it. And he said, oh, yes, Mr. Krogh, yes, that is one of the letters Mr. Presley has written, and we would very much like to see if we could arrange some kind of a meeting with the president. Well, I'm still thinking, all right, so he got an impersonator of an aide to take this, and this is still Chapin's joke. So I said, look, why don't you come on over to the White House, and let's talk about this. Because normally when you're responsible for a meeting with the president, you sort of like to know who's going to go into the Oval Office. So they said, oh, we'll be right over. Now, I think maybe a little time had elapsed from the letter's delivery through the guard at the Northwest Gate to Chapin's office to me, reading it, talking it over with my
hours at least.
Astounded staff.
Did you expect to hear from the White House?
Listen, Elvis went to a meeting, which I'd never seen him in a meeting either. And he had left me a phone number and said, you stay here and wait for the White House call. I read a lot of Howard Hughes books where he left people in hotels for like a year.
He ended up staying there himself. Waiting for the same guy.
So, and I didn't want to hurt Elvis's feelings and tell him we weren't going to get a call. So that's how that.
So you were surprised when this Mr. Krogh called?
I was surprised, and after Bud called, I never underestimated my friend's power again.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
since you mentioned Dwight Chapin, let's take a look at the memo that he sent to
Bob Haldeman.
Bob Haldeman, the president's chief of staff. This is the memo suggesting, offering the option that the president meet Elvis Presley. The most interesting part of the memo is page 2. Let's go to page 2. Do you see the writing? You must be kidding. That's H. That means he actually said go ahead, and that's what led to.
That's right, and where he said that he wanted the president to start meeting young people, and let's begin with Elvis Presley. Let's start with the most famous man on the planet, so let's do that. And then Bob wrote, "You must be kidding," but you see his big H there, approving the meeting. So we had a go ahead, but now this came a little bit after I had this audition meeting with Jerry and Sonny West. And one thing you might tell us a little bit is, when did Sonny West join the mini entourage that came?
When I had made the deal with Elvis to have security from Memphis meet us where I could get back to California, when I called Elvis, who was at Findlater's office, to tell him that you wanted to meet about the meeting with the president, Elvis said, and this is the type of friend he was. I mean, he's going to go, in his mind, to the White House. It was the executive offices. And, he knew if he got that meeting, he knew he was, nobody says no to Elvis.
Yeah.
So
I learned that.
Yeah. So what happened is, he said, Jerry, go outside in front of the hotel, and I will swing by and pick you up on the way. And that's, he included his friends and everything. As I was waiting and I saw the limousine coming, I saw Sonny getting out of a taxi, and I said, "Sonny, put your luggage with the bellman. We're going to the White House." So that's how Sonny got involved.
So how did the audition go?
Well, the audition went splendidly. I mean, I didn't know until I got a call from the Northwest Gate. This is now the old executive office building from the Guard.
Right.
And I still did not know you guys were for real. And I thought, well, it's going to be an impersonator.
You still don't know.
I still don't know. That's right. That's right. None of us are for real. Ooh. Anyway, so this guard said, "Mr. Kroger, there's somebody here who looks surprisingly like Elvis Presley, and he's wearing an interesting outfit. They were tight-fitting purple velvet pants and a silk shirt open to the navel with a gold chain. And what do you want me to do with him, sir?" And I said, "Well, bring him on down to the office." And they brought him on down. It wasn't until they walked into my office that I realized, oh my goodness, this is Elvis Presley. Oh, and my secretary's, Sandra Green. Oh, it is Elvis Presley. And then you all came in, and I will tell you, that was one of the most lovely half hours that I've had talking to you all and hearing Elvis talk from the heart about what his country meant to him. He sort of paraphrased the letter. I've gotten a lot from my country.
Yes.
I want to give it back. I want to help the country out. I can go into any group of people and be accepted by anyone.
Yes.
And he had put in the letter that he would like to be made a federal agent at large. We don't have federal agents at large. We got Secret Service agents, FBI. We got all kinds of agents, but not agents at large. But that didn't seem to me to be a showstopper. But I should also, full disclosure requires me to tell, I was the biggest Elvis fan in the 1950s. Never went on a date without him. That would say. So here he is. He's in my office with you guys, and I'm trying to justify, how do I set this meeting up with the president? Because you have to write a script of talking points.
Yeah.
This was sort of a futile effort, but I mean, so I'm talking to him, thinking about it. What can I say? And I think you only stayed about a half an hour, and then I asked you to go back to the hotel.
Right.
And I said, we'll see if we can get the approvals. And this memo was sent in right after I'd had that audition. Dwight had already drafted up a lot of the content and the reasoning behind it by saying he's the visionary for this whole thing. So I called him over and I said, this meeting has got to take place. The president has never met anyone quite like Elvis Presley. Elvis hasn't met anyone quite like the president. And what I'm really saying is, and I want to be in this meeting.
And
And here's the memo that puts you in the meeting.
Yes.
That's good. You see that? Participants, Elvis Presley, Bud Croak.
Yeah, I wrote that.
Actually doesn't say Richard Nixon.
No. He's a given. He's like the desk. I said, I wanted to make sure that I would get in this meeting. And Dwight really wanted to set it up that way. So I drafted this up and put some ideas about how Elvis could help us on the drug program because we wanted some.
All right, you guys, that's the end of part one. I'm going to make this a two-parter because it is an hour 15. So I hope you guys enjoyed part one. I did. I loved hearing about how this whole thing came together. So stay tuned for part two, which will be out on Friday. Again, shout out to Carrie for requesting this video. If you guys enjoyed part one, smash that like button. Let's run the likes up. It helps us in the algorithm to grow our family more and to get this video out to more people. So let's smash that like button. Comment down below other Elvis reactions you guys would like to see. And if you do not want to miss part two, smash that subscribe button and turn on that post notification bell so you'll be notified on Friday when part two goes live. And while you're at it, go check out my very last video, my reaction to Back in Memphis. That video will be over here, so go check that out. And I'll see you guys on Friday in part two. I'm out. Peace.